Hey, how's it going today, Mike? Thanks for joining us at Cryptstar. Really excited to have you. There's been a kind of big debate I've seen on Twitter and Discord. People kind of going like, what is FA 1.2? What is FA 2.0? And there's a lot of technical documentation, but I haven't really seen any of the developers. They're all really smart on Tezos, but they can't seem to put it in a layman's terminology for the everyday users. So I kind of want to pull you in here today just to discuss that. Would you mind first giving me a background about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Mike. I'm from Cryptonomic. I work on a bunch of Tezos stuff, among other things. And for Tezos specifically, I do the Galleon wallet, which we could talk about as well, which is why I know things about tokens on Tezos. FA1.2 was the first attempt really at formalizing a specification for tokens on Tezos. It came out originally, I want to say 2 years ago now, maybe. And it was supposed to be an ERC20 equivalent. You can transfer tokens, you can hold tokens, smart contracts can hold tokens, and this enabled us to build DeFi applications, right? So we could have AMMs and so on. Then sometime later, we got FA2.0, and that one I think is more of an equivalent of ERC 721 or something like that. I forget off the top of my head. The main difference, really, when it was created was that it was written for NFTs. So a single contract could contain multiple tokens. And FA1.2 was meant really for asset tokens, like let's take USDTZ an example, or TZBTC. Those are FA1.2 tokens. They define rather a single asset, right? So in case of USDTZ, it's a dollar equivalent token, and that's it. So multiple people can have positions in that token. So internally, the contract has a single ledger, so to speak, saying that Mike has 2, Mac has 7, right? So
is that the big? What's it called? Big storage or what's it called?
it's called a big map.
Big map. That's right. Yeah.
With FA 2.0, the ledger is a little bit different. It says it might say still Mike, and then it'll have an index, and it can be 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever. 17,000, it doesn't matter. And then to that, you assign a balance. So what I mean by that is if I have a bunch of NFTs and these NFTs are indexed, right? Meaning like 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you take Hypnoc as an example, right? They use an FA2.0 token to describe their NFTs on chain, and they are indexed consecutively. So the first person who mints a token is 1, the next one is 2. They recently crossed 500,000 mark, which is amazing, really. Like it's easily the most popular dApp on Tezos, I think, still close to a year after launch. The storage is a little bit different, right? But the other big difference is the approval mechanism, right? So for FA 1.2, what happens is if I want to trade on an AMM, right, like KeeperSwap, I would say I want to sell, let's say, 10 USDTZ, and I want to get back XTZ. For me to do this, the AMM contract, the KeeperSwap contract in this case, would have to come get my balance without me sending it to them. They will say, hey, I'm going to give you 3 XTZ, give me 10 USDTZ, right? So to do that, I have to allow them to do this, right? Because otherwise everyone's going to be stealing everyone's money. So
yeah. It's like having a vault that's wide open, right?
Right, exactly. So the FA1.2 approval function takes 2 parameters. One parameter is the address of the actor, in this case KeeperSwap, and the second parameter is the amount you're willing to give up. So effectively what you're doing is setting an allowance. So it doesn't have to be a contract, it could be you. I can allow your address to take up to 10 USDTZ out of my account, and then you can take 5 today, you can take 3 tomorrow, you can take the other 2 a week from now.
Okay, and that's with FA 1.2. Sorry.
Correct. That's FA 1.2. So the point is, you set specific constraints on how many tokens can be withdrawn on your behalf, right?
Okay.
FA 2.0 is different. It has a concept of operator, and what you do is you only set the operator, meaning if I want you to have access to some of my balance, I can say, well, allow Mac to take balance, but I don't specify how much. And that's an unfortunate difference. So as soon as I provide this allowance to you, you can take 2, you can take 2,000, you can take 2 million. Well, whatever I happen to have in my account, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have any control over that. There's no way for me to limit this.
Okay.
So in the context of applications like Galleon, for example, we have integrated swaps for KeeperSwap and some other exchanges like Vortex, for example. The way it works is when you want to exchange your USDT, well, USDT is not a good example. We need an FA2 token. So wrap is FA2. Exchange wrapped link for USDTZ. Well, I'm sorry, XTZ. What I would do, I would submit multiple operations. I will say first, allow the Vortex contract to take balance out of my account. Then I will say, hey, Vortex, I want to sell 10 wrapped link. And then the third operation rather, is going to be revoke permission to Vortex. I'm giving him just enough time to perform the operation on my behalf, and I revoke it immediately. Now, the cool thing about Tezos is that operations that come in a group execute atomically. What that means is I just described an operation group of 3 operations: approve, sell, revoke. All these 3 are guaranteed by the platform to execute together. If any one of them fails, the whole thing fails. So it's impossible for me to approve and sell and then not revoke.
It's just like flash loans, right? It's like the same kind of idea, sort of. Everything gets done within the same block. If one part of the flash swap fails, then the whole flash loan fails.
Sort of, yes. That works in a different mechanism. This one, just in the context of Tezos, an operation group is guaranteed to execute atomically, which is really, really useful, and it improves security of the network, really.
That is so nice, yeah.
It's super useful. What I'm getting at is that if I approve, sell, and revoke, I'm good, right? Because they will take the amount of tokens that I allowed them to take. Now, obviously, can a malicious contract still take more? Yes. How would that work? Well, if I have malicious swap, for lack of a better term, I approve, sell, revoke, and let's say I say sell 10, but it just decides to take 100. Like, let's say it takes any amount that I put in and it multiplies it by 10. I don't have a way of stopping that. So as long as the entire group is valid, it'll execute, and they'll take 100 instead of 10. In this case, I would have to go read the contract myself and satisfy myself that it's secure. Now, with FA1.2, that's not possible. With FA1.2, I say approve Vortex for 10, sell 10, and then depending on the implementation of the contract, I don't necessarily have to revoke. So you revoke by basically setting the approval to 0. A bunch of these contract implementations, they will just decrease the number to 0 automatically because you already sold that much, so you're done. That's the argument. I happen to be on the side of FA1.2. I do like this extra security. However, FA2, even though really it only specifies a very narrow set of functions, like FA2 has been interpreted to mean many different things, but really it is only about transfers and only about setting operators. FA2 on its own says nothing about how many tokens there might be within the contract. It says nothing like NFTs or not. It says nothing about how the ledger storage structure might look like. It doesn't talk about how token metadata is defined. It's only about transfers. Can I have, let's say, an FA1.2 token with metadata? Yes. Can I have an FA1.2 type NFT? No, because it doesn't take the index parameter. FA2 specifically takes an index, a token index, like for NFTs, for example. So it's quite flexible, but the main differences are that FA1.2 is permissioned for the specific amount, and FA2 is a multi-token contract.
So in this case, you would consider FA2 much better for NFT use, and FA1.2 better for like sort of token exchanging and like sort of like an actual value, token value sort of idea.
I like the design of FA1.2 for asset tokens, like financial asset tokens, a lot more than FA2, exactly for this reason, that you can very specifically limit the balances being taken out on your behalf. FA2 is essentially required for NFTs if you're going to have a single contract containing all your NFT definitions. So Calumet, for example, also has an FA2 token implementation for their NFT contract.
I see. So the way how this malicious kind of activity could be enacted would be someone who, like, say, for example, someone implemented an FA2.0 token, and then somebody got a hold of that contract's private key, and then they were able to maliciously alter the code of the token through an entry point and change it, like you said, to like 100x or whatever, kind of sneak that in there, and then would they have to redeploy the contract, or would it just automatically just kind of deploy secretly like that? Or
not at all like that. As a matter of fact,
okay.
most of what you're describing is impossible for
Oh,
various
okay,
security
okay.
reasons.
I'm
So
just wondering exactly.
this is good.
Yeah,
So let's talk about
how
it.
is it? Yeah.
Generally speaking, right, on blockchains, contracts are immutable, which means that once they're deployed, that's it. It will
Oh,
always
okay.
be the way it was deployed, always. There are glaring exceptions. More recently, I don't remember when exactly, but it was around the beginning of this year, it became possible to store a function in contract storage. So what that means is that instead of burning the function into the contract itself such that it cannot be changed, I can now say, I don't know what the function is, but I know it's in my storage, so let me load my storage and then just run my storage. So this opens the door to upgradable contracts. Now what I can do is I can change the contents of the storage and make it a completely different function.
Okay, yeah.
Now, this is dangerous from a security perspective, right? Because
it's not
let's
immutable
say,
anymore.
Right, and it's a big deal, and here's why. So I can audit the contract in its current state. You know, what is it? At 11:24 p.m., I can audit this contract and satisfy myself that the current state is good. And then at 11:24 and 10 seconds, I will call this contract. But it just so happens that for some reason, my transaction happened to be queued up behind a different transaction that modified the function of the contract. So my transaction may still be valid, but it is no longer calling the contract I'm expecting it to call because the contract has changed. So the contract address stayed the same, the entry point name stayed the same. What changed is what this entry point does inside, because the entry point inside says, I'm going to load some code from storage and just run it.
So in order to combat this, could there be like a simple tool setup where people can copy the contract ID and then load it into like a checker, and then the checker can be like, oh, this storage is not immutable. You shouldn't interact with this contract. Something like that. Would that be a possibility, or actually a new standard that makes it so that immutable storage, that all storage has to be immutable?
So storage is specifically meant to be mutable because storage is where things like this token ledger goes, right? So like you can have 10 USDTZ today, you can have 20 tomorrow, you can have 5 the next day. So storage is definitely mutable. As a practice, I have thus far not deployed upgradable contracts for this reason, because yes, it's more flexibility. Yes, you can change the functionality without having to deploy a new contract, which is potentially easier to integrate, but the security of immutability is a great thing to have. So I personally have not done any upgradable contracts.
So, okay, and that's all FA2 is all upgradable,
no.
Okay,
This can be done anywhere. FA2 doesn't say anything about whether or not the contract is upgradable. FA2 is only the definition of the transfer function and the operator function, nothing else. So
even FA1.2 can be the same thing.
Correct. Any contract can be upgradable depending on the implementation. So just the same, FA1.2 only talks about the transfer function. That's it. Well, transfer and this allowance process. That's it. It doesn't say anything about how storage should look like. It doesn't say anything about upgradability of the contract or anything like that. It's only about transfers. For that matter, the storage internally can look like anything that you want. So TZBTC has quite complex storage compared to, say, USDTZ. It's a lot more difficult to read and integrate, but whatever. They made a decision to do it this way, that's fine. So my point is that they're both compliant FA1.2 tokens, regardless of the fact that their ledger internally has a completely different structure. But I wanted to address another thing that you said before we move on. So we covered the fact that a contract cannot change, generally speaking. Another thing, a contract does not have a private key. The contract has a hash, which is that KT1, etc. It doesn't have any keys.
But the TZ1 behind it does, right?
Correct. But generally, contracts have a concept of an administrator, and the administrator can change. So if, if anyone can change a contract, an upgradable contract, presumably there would be some kind of a function to confirm that the person changing the contract is the administrator and a trusted party, or perhaps a multi-sig instead of just a single account. And you can't redeploy the contract, right? So like once you deploy a contract and it has a KT1 address, like that's it. It's that. You can't change that address. You can't change what that address points to. But if the contract is upgradable, you may be able to change some of the functionality. My example was about a malicious AMM, not a malicious token. So the token is what it is. Let's take USDTZ again as an example. But if someone deploys a malicious AMM where the the sell function is such that it takes the amount that you send, multiplies it by 10, and withdraws 10x of whatever amount you put in. That's possible. And upgradable or not isn't even relevant. It's trivial to write a contract like this. I can do it tonight. And then deploy it. There's nothing is stopping anyone from doing it. The idea is that you want to interact with AMMs from parties that you trust, or ideally, in our decentralized disintermediate future, you would be auditing these contracts yourself. Now, most certainly there are no tools for that today. It is very difficult to audit a contract, especially written Mickelson. That's why we have tools like SmartPy that let you write contracts in a more digestible way, and they're easier to audit for that matter because of this. But the only truth is the code you see on the chain.
I see. So for the end user, if they see that a token is using like FA2.0, for example, Crunchy or Spicy Swap, which was kind of where this debate started, basically people need to make sure that the website that they're using is the real website. That's the key, because they could basically copy the website to a new URL, right? And then they could redeploy the code and then just change it up a little bit so that they can go ahead and take like all of your tokens with one swap.
They could, yeah. So,
but with
this is something that
1.2, if you know the swap uses FA1.2, then if the copy is made of that website, and you know that it's FA1.2, then can they still copy it as a FA2.0 and then kind of mimic everything else and then make it FA2.0?
No. Because the thing that they control is the AMM, not the token, right? So this has nothing to do with the token. It has to do with the AMM. So the malicious AMM can still steal your funds. And when you say, exchange token for XTZ, it can just take the token and not give you any XTZ. That's totally possible, right? What I'm saying is that your losses, potential losses, have a hard limit with the FA1.2 standard, but they do not with an FA2 standard. That's it.
Okay. So even though the UI might say 2, it could actually, in the background, it could be doing 200 and you wouldn't know. Like Temple Wallet could say 2, and then in the background it'd actually be 200. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it wouldn't be up to Temple. I'm not suggesting that they're compromised. What I'm saying is that if I call some random AMM that I don't know who deployed it and I haven't looked at the code, it is possible that it will do something unexpected. Yes.
Okay. I was just looking for an example so that we can be on the lookout, because I was just thinking when you do this swap on Spicy or on Alien or Quipa Swap or Plenty, it always gives you the exact amount that you're going to be swapping or whatever, and then that's what happens. You end up getting it. But if the malicious AMM was to be deployed and like copied by a new domain or something like that, would it show in one of the wallets exactly like that the incorrect amount is going to be swapped, or how would that work exactly? Sorry if that's a tough question.
It's just there's so many possibilities. It's hard to consolidate into something small. So there are some options. Let's see. For example, in Galleon, in most cases, before submitting an operation to the chain, we simulate it. So the Tezos node, the software that runs the chain, has a function to simulate an operation. So it takes the operation that you're going to send and it pretends like it's going to execute. And it does that so that you can get the results back to see how this operation executed. And then you can compare the inputs and the outputs to see if they are what you expect. So this would be one way for you to detect whether or not the contract you're interacting with is potentially malicious, for example.
Okay. So there are built-in safety nets within most of the wallets, is what you're saying, for this kind of thing?
No. So Galleon, even though it does audit the results, it's not going to audit the token transfers. We do not have this functionality at the moment. I don't know if anyone else does. My suggestion was just generally you should be interacting with contracts deployed by people you trust for the moment. Yeah.
Okay. I did have one more question. There's another possibility I've heard on. I'm pretty sure I've heard this on Ethereum. Basically, you do a swap, and the contract or the AMM was malicious. And at first, you did the swap, and it was fine. But then you come back a day later, and all the tokens are gone because they left the open operator functionality. Is that another possibility with the FA2.0 with the malicious AMM operate?
So if you submit an operation to the chain, again, it comes in this triple, right? So approve, trade, revoke. If you submit only approve and trade, then yeah, you left the door open.
Oh, okay.
So
and
don't
that
do
and the AMM could do that if it's a malicious AMM. That's not a token thing. It's the actual.
No. The AMM cannot prevent your operation from executing. So, for example, if I submit these 3 operations, no one can stop those 3 operations. Like the AMM cannot do that. Or
Oh no,
contract.
I was talking about like it's a malicious AMM, and then it's only going to submit the first 2, even though you think you're submitting 3. You don't know how to read the code, so it just says the 2, and then you don't actually remove the operator, and then you leave your desk or whatever, and then in the background, a bot it waits till all the users use the AMM with the certain FA2 token, and then like 3 days later, it just like immediately takes all the FA2 tokens and swaps it on QuickBoost and does like a a market dump.
Okay, so that's sort of possible. If you don't pay attention, I'll explain why. A lot of the time, people interact with these AMMs through Beacon, right?
Yep.
And Beacon, the idea is that the web-based app that you're using will generate the collection of operations that it wants you to execute. And then something like Galleon will say, hey, I'm going to execute these operations for you on behalf of Plenty, let's say, do you agree? And you're going to say yes, right? So when you're interacting with an FA2 token, you want to make sure that there's a matching revoke to match your approve, regardless of how many operations happen in the middle. So you always want to revoke permissions to the actor that you allowed in the beginning, or multiple actors for that matter. So it's possible, for example, then that the malicious AMM will create a malicious website that only says approve and trade, and it never gives you the third one. However, if you submit all 3, they cannot stop the third one from executing. They have no control over it, as a matter of fact, because the node says, you do this. The contract doesn't say, hey, I'm going to do these things, but not other things. Right? So if you submit an operation group with these 3 things, they will be executed all or none.
Okay. And at the end of that execution, the operators can still remain open, and they can still have control as
if
possible,
you do not revoke as part of the group. You have to revoke.
Okay. And then the only way, there's no way to check that right now for the average user. It's going to be written in pretty much code, right?
I'm not sure how other wallets render it. In Galleon, we do show you the full operation stack that's going to be executed. It's a little bit code, yes. It's a little bit like code. It's interesting.
I'm trying to break this down for the everyday users, because Tezos is very technical. And the reason I say that is because I have been in Ethereum, and I know that with Ethereum they had multiple issues with ERC20 tokens leaving the permissions open, and then like 6 months later that the main account got hacked, or there was an AMM issue and they all got dumped on. And then they actually created a paid app where you could go in and check all of your MetaMask permissions and then close all the open permissions. But like with Tezos, you don't have to do that because we have this, verification process. But it's kind of funny to see how strong the devs are in Tezos with this security thing. Whereas compared to Ethereum, it was like an open door the whole time, pretty much.
So it's definitely important to make sure
Yeah.
that you send the matching revoke.
It's a
And
very
I'm
big
not aware
bonus
of
to
any
Tezos,
examples
yeah.
of where they don't. So in Galleon, for example, we integrate swaps for a bunch of these platforms, right? So when Dexter was popular, we had Dexter. We still do, actually. Keep a Swap and Vortex are integrated, meaning that you don't need to use the website to buy or sell tokens. You can do it directly in Galleon. So we most certainly submit the revoke operation.
That's awesome. Wow, I think you really covered this really well. I think
I hope
everyone's going to be able
so.
to
But
understand.
if anyone has questions later when you post this, I'm around to answer them.
Yeah. So I think key takeaways is if you're trying to be really careful and you're not very tech savvy, try to stick to FA1.2 tokens. And if you're going to FA2.0 tokens, make sure you check that it's not a bad actor, that it's not a random website that you're trying to interact with, things like that. And if possible, hopefully Tezos will hopefully migrate to like a new standard that, I don't know. I've heard rumors of an FA 3.0. Is there something like that coming around? You haven't heard about
I'm
it?
not sure I don't know if there's another attempt at a standard, but
It's been
new
hearsay.
tokens are being deployed.
Okay. Okay, awesome. I think that's actually good for today. Honestly, that was just within our time limit, and we covered the topic really well. Yeah. Thanks
Awesome.
for having me. Is there
Happy to
anything
help.
you wanna talk about Galleon real quick, or anything you wanna cover before we close this session?
Well, we update Galleon a lot. If you guys don't know, it's a Tezos native wallet. We deploy it for Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. Lately, updates have been focusing on NFTs. That's been a popular thing on Tezos. So I think I made 3 releases in the last 3 weeks. I think there's one tomorrow. So what's in those? Have you been following the PFP projects lately?
Most of them, yes. I mean, I was big in Tezers, Go-Go's, Neons, Project Neon. Yeah.
So let's see. I got a few of them. Incidentally, I don't have a Tether to test with, so I don't have Tezers. I should probably add those. I missed it, so I don't have any NFTs to test with. But Go-Go's, Neons, Cumulus, Sumos are launching today and yesterday, so that's supported. Other things as well. The Scallies, did you pick up a few of those?
I picked them up. Yeah, I was surprised the floor went up 4x. I was like, oh, sell. And now I only have 2 left.
I see. Yeah, no. So those are now in Galleon as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
I constantly update for the various DeFi bits. So every time Plenty deploys a new farm, I add the farm to the list because we have a nifty little button. If you have some Plenty tokens and you happen to be farming them, there is going to be a harvest button under your Plenty balance. So you can harvest straight up. And the idea is that you don't have to harvest them one by one. Well, they have a harvest all button now. They didn't used to. But anyhow, you can do it all from Galleon. You hit harvest, enter your password, and it'll harvest all your tokens for you.
Oh, that's great. Wow.
So let's see what else. We have this functionality for KDAO with KUSD as well, for that matter. You can harvest your KDAO rewards if you are farming your KUSD tokens.
Just waiting till we have Galleon integrate all the dApps, and you harvest everything from every single dApp.
So it's been on my mind. It's just such a dynamic space. It's difficult to keep up. I'm probably going to add smack harvesting sooner rather than later. I've reached out to those guys for the code. I don't want the AMM code I can write because it's easy. The harvesting code is more complicated. So what I do is I ask these teams to give me the code that they use themselves to estimate your pending rewards, because they obviously know their contracts better and how they calculate this number. It's not always obvious from just looking at the storage of the contract. I'm happy to integrate more of these harvest buttons for people, like wrap, for example. I could do that, but I need the function to do the calculation.
So basically DApp owners, if you want to get integrated with Galleon, hit them up.
Yes.
Be proactive, communicate with each other. It's very important. All right. That was a great session. Thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's really late for you, isn't it? It's like 12 p.m. you said?
It's 17 minutes to midnight, so I got another 2 hours in me, I guess.
Awesome. Well, I'll go ahead and end the live stream now, and we can talk afterwards. All right. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bro, we need to pump it. Everybody go to Twitter and hashtag the things, pump it. Pump it real good. We need a good pump. Everybody deserves a nice Tezos pump.